This week, also, Governor Mike Braun announced a partnership between Indiana and Israel.
Right. Iron Nation, Indiana. It's a public-private partnership worth more than $60 million in investment. I sat down with the governor for an exclusive interview about the plan. So, Governor, let's talk about Iron Nation, Indiana. At its core, what does success look like for you with this partnership?
So, about a year ago, Congressman Luke Messer is now in the private sector, a group of entrepreneurs right over there at that table from Israel. They were starting to look to see where they'd want to invest. And of course, he's going to do everything he can to get them to look at Indiana. And, you know, these are technology-based companies. So generally, they would probably look at Texas, maybe at Tennessee even. They're trying to wrestle in that arena. And then traditionally, it's been places like Massachusetts, New York, or California. A lot of businesses are moving away from those states just due to the business environment. We got a neighbor to the west, Illinois, that you know, our economy is growing twice as fast as theirs. So here it was kind of interesting because I spent 37 years in the private sector, entrepreneur, and leveraged technology significantly into the success of that business. And we just hit it off, and generally I didn't think that was going to arrive at something within a year where they're now ready to do something in terms of investing their capital. So it moved quickly, but I think Indiana's been seeing that kind of result with our own GDP growth and what we've accomplished over the first year and 3 months. So that was just around a year ago, and now they're ready to hit the ground running. And these are going to be some of the highest paying jobs, fastest growing type companies, just what we want here in the state.
Do we have commitments from specific companies already?
So individually, we'll be fleshing that out, but we've committed up to $15 million in incentives as our part of this kind of public-private partnership. And their capital is going to have flexibility by company, you know, but they're talking about 30 million plus that they're going to be putting in.
So given the state's $15 million investment, what's the minimum return that you would consider acceptable?
So the good news is, and very seldom are we putting money directly into deals. They're performance-based tax credits. So we'll spend that money if it's performing that investment. So that's the beauty about how we're doing it. And other places might actually put skin in the game irrespective of performance. Here, it's because I think they see the environment that we've got that has made many come here and say, hey, you're very common sense, reasonable on regulations. You're a low tax state, and therefore we feel comfortable just coming here to do business.
How many jobs do you hope realistically this could create, and in what time frame?
So it would not be too different in terms of how you'd calculate on that kind of investment, but it would be in the hundreds, possibly thousands of jobs, and it depends on size of each company, what speed they're going to be moving at. But generally, these are fast-growing enterprises if they're technologically based, which they all are.
Any guarantees that the jobs go to people already living right here in Indiana?
I mean, they're coming here, so it would be going to people that live and work here.
I mean, are you requiring them to hire locally as an incentive, incentivizing it in that way?
Like for instance, there was a solar field that went in with some Israeli investors, I think Doral, and they were using labor to build it from out of state. These are businesses that'll be setting up shop with a HR department. They're producing stuff. You know, it's sales. So it's not like installing something into a solar field or I'm not sure if they were involved in wind or not, but a lot of the early in Israel investing in this country when it comes to technology, they've been doing most of that from within. So this to me was interesting because it looks like they're trying to decide where they're going to locate among the 50 states, or at least among the ones I mentioned earlier. And that's, to me, pleasing and should catch attention.
Why focus on recruiting Israeli companies? Why not invest some of that same money in Indiana startups?
We'll do all that. I mean, we're blessed that a lot of companies, you talk about onshoring or coming here, that offsets a lot of the stuff that we have to import from other countries, and ours is going to be all of the above. You know, I've set up, the only office I've created is the Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, aimed at that sector, homegrown businesses that maybe don't have as high a profile as some of the larger businesses you want to consider coming here. But we're taking a regional view so that we can see it across our state, and we're looking at the whole spectrum. Remember, small businesses create most of the jobs and grow them initially. Larger companies house a lot of them. But if you're growing employment in your state, you got to be doing it with startups, companies that aren't necessarily here, and that keeps driving the value of labor up.
Let me ask you this. This partnership is specifically designed to bring Israeli companies into Indiana at a time when Israel is facing growing international scrutiny over its military actions. Did that factor into your decision making at all?
No, I think when I look at when Senator Rick Scott and I visited Israel back in August of 19, I was impressed about all of that. Of course, that was before Hamas. That was before what we're dealing with here. It was amazing to me how they persevere and do so well. And of any country per capita, technologically, they would have to be right up there with us and just a few other places. So I think this is going to be, for them, independent of what they've had to do since they've been a country surrounded by a lot of players in the neighborhood that are trying to make life difficult, and they've persevered and prospered. To me, that's an amazing sign of just persistence, dealing with a lot of tough environment, and doing well in their own country, and now looking to spread their wings into other places that might make sense. And of course, we're the biggest economy in the world. We've got 50 states that would try to compete with that business, and the fact that they're looking at Indiana for this, to me, is pleasing.
But we are seeing, quite a bit of international criticism over their actions in Gaza and Lebanon, and concerns raised by the United Nations about civilian casualties. So does partnering this closely send a message about where Indiana stands on that?
No, I think this is more to do with economic development and the kind of private sector of investment. On the government end of it, you're going to have camps on both sides there, and obviously that has been a discussion across the country. Clearly, we're aligned with them in terms of the two countries that are taking on the biggest country that has sponsored terrorism, Iran. And I don't know that you'll ever have everybody aligned there, but generally there's going to be alignment within the folks living in any given state, if it makes sense for economic development, if it's going to create new high-paying jobs, and it's going to be a growth sector in your economy.
I mean, speaking of Iran, with tensions there, rising, in a word, does this partnership risk pulling Indiana economically or symbolically closer to that broader conflict?
No, economically, I think those are separated, and I think as you find that resolving itself, they are over there involved in something that almost anyone agrees it makes sense, keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and where our country and Israel have bore the brunt of it, most other countries agree with that end goal. So I think it's about as simple as that.
We'll have more on Emily's conversation with the governor shortly. As you heard Governor Braun say, former Congressman Luke Messer, also a former state lawmaker, initially brought those Israeli entrepreneurs and the idea to Indiana leaders last year. And Luke Messer joins us now to talk about how things started. So thanks for being here.
Oh, excited to be here.
So how does Luke Messer bring Israeli business entrepreneurs to Indiana? How's that start?
Well, Iron Nation, Indiana, I really applaud the Braun administration for both the courage in this unique moment. Obviously, Israel and Iran are in the midst of a war with the U.S., but secondly, for the wisdom to bring this forward. We've been working for decades to create Indiana as a tech hub of innovation. Israel is the third largest tech hub in the entire world, behind only San Francisco and New York. And these companies all have to come to the U.S. market, and they're excited by the opportunity to come to the market in Indiana.
Luke, we hear a lot about trade delegations going to other parts of the world, Europe, Asia, to form these partnerships. How important is it to compete for international business? Are other states doing this?
Yeah, well, other states are, and Indiana has 385 Japanese businesses in our state. And the reason we have that is 30 or 40 years ago, a bunch of leaders started by John Mutz, Bob Orr, and others, and it's built over decades. These are some of our best employers, right? Part of the vision here is we can do that with Israel too. You have this amazing tech hub there, but you have all these extraordinary assets in Indiana from our companies like Eli Lilly, Elanco, Cook, and others, universities like IU and Purdue, institutions like the CICP. But we've got to have those entrepreneurs too. And these Israeli entrepreneurs are a great opportunity for our state.
How do you address concerns that the partnership is with Israel, given the geopolitical tensions? You mentioned the war. The United Nations has been critical of some of the actions by Israel lately. How do you explain that?
Well, look, I think you have to start with the understanding that the vast majority of Hoosiers are supportive of Israel. But I think beyond that, trade makes friends. When you're trading with each other, you have a better opportunity to understand each other, and you end up building stronger bonds. Again, back to that Japanese example. We have much stronger bonds with Japan today than we did 40 years ago before those job opportunities come here. The real proof will be in bringing these businesses and bringing these jobs to the state of Indiana. It's important to say that the state's put $15 million in commitments forward, but these Israeli entrepreneurs have put more than $30 million forward, and there are strong commitments to make sure that there are Indiana jobs here, Indiana executives, and Indiana businesses that come from this work.
What's the metrics for judging success as we go forward?
So it's a $60 million fund, and at least half of it, 30 million plus, will be focused on Indiana investment. And those investments have to be U.S. headquarters here, U.S. employees that are based in Indiana, and we'll be looking for Indiana partners that we can do that with. To make this most successful, we'll be partnering with Indiana universities, Indiana businesses, and other Indiana organizations as these companies decide to come here.
All right, Luke Messer, good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
Thanks
for
being
being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care.